It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by EasyDNS.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Access of Easy with Joey and Len. This is number 302. Len, we got a lot to talk about today, including a couple of drop everythings and make a change to your security stack. But before we get into it, I should remind people that this is the audio companion to the Access of Easy newsletter, which you can get at accessofeasy.com. Just sign up. All it takes is your email. And then when you sign up, I believe you get $10 off of whatever you decide to try out from EasyDNS, which you can't beat, man. That's, not many people giving away $10. You know anyone else giving away $10 these days, Len, or just EasyDNS?
I don't want to say our promotion code on our show, so I'm going to say no. I don't know of anybody. That's a good deal, though. Check it out, because you know what, they offer good stuff and good service. I had somebody just this week sign up for a DNS and a domain name, and they had some questions. I immediately went to Mark. He sent me to the right place, and I gave it to the guy. So there's good service, and you know what, you can pay with Bitcoin. That's another option. I like them from top to bottom.
Fantastic. People who are watching will notice that I'm in a different background today. My wife and I are getting ready to sell our house. So been a busy week. I took this week off work to do some other stuff and ended up having to do this instead, sort of last minute. So here we go. I'm exhausted, but we should get into it, Len. Last week's quote: "The most important revolutions don't come from marching in the streets. The most important revolutions happen in each person's heart." That was from Ben Hunt, who I believe is the custodian, the proprietor, I don't know what you would call him, of Epsilon Theory, a website that I frequent. It's a pretty good site. I think there's a paid version and a free version. So that was from Ben. No one got that. And this week's quote: "All models are wrong, but some are useful." I've heard that quote before. Have you heard that quote before?
I can't say I have.
It's an economist. It's an economist, I think, who said that, but I don't know who it was. Probably not The Economist. That magazine is turned into a complete rag. But anyway, the first person who gets that answer, next domain hosting or renewal on EasyDNS, which is dope. So, Len, let's start with the two drop everythings. Do you want to get into it here?
Well, the Google story is really big, and this applies to the Chrome web browser, and a lot of users use this. And those who do should take note that there is a 0-day vulnerability that may be impacting you. And the good news is there has been a security update, and this release is to allow for people to close this loophole that was previously open. As for this particular attack or potential attack that could happen, Google is tight-lipped, and they have not provided any details about how the exploit, how it could have been used or how it was used. And this is par for the course with them, because they typically don't disclose this information until the majority of users have updated and fixed the problem. And see, these 0-day attacks or vulnerabilities, they're not uncommon with Google products, particularly Chrome. In 2022, the company patched 9 Chrome 0 days. And that's including 5 discovered by its threat analysis group. And with respect to this one that was recently discovered and they're trying to patch and have people patch it, it's a vulnerability in the V8 JavaScript engine. And I can't really say too much about it because details is relatively limited. I will say that there is no software out there that is immune to a lot of this, because the complexity of the code and how often these programs are integrated into other programs, there's always going to be bugs and security holes that are going to have to be found out there, and they need to be patched right away. Users should be diligent with applying these patches. And Google has announced that it is temporarily offering up to $180,000 through its bug bounty program for a full chain exploit that leads to sandbox escape in Google. Essentially, this is an exploit that allows for malicious code to be executed from the sandbox outside the latter's isolated environment. So they are actively trying to get all other bugs that have yet to be discovered, and they're offering a bounty of $180,000. But given how deep the pockets that is Google's, and how many users and businesses out there that use their products like Chrome, This is small potatoes. A hacker out there might, if they happen to find this, they might find it's more advantageous financially to actually go ahead and exploit people's information rather than to take up the $180,000 offer by Google. But yeah, if you are using Google Chrome, try to look for an update. If it is there, apply it right away, because this is a 0 day that's going to be potentially impacting you.
Was there not a story? This is drawing on the CVP show a little bit. There was a story either on Access of Easy or on our other show where we talked about a certain Chrome wallet being drained by some exploit. I wonder if these two things are related, because that was some time ago now. And just, here we are now with the, drop everything and fix your browser patch update. You raise a good point there about the opportunity cost that a hacker, black or white hat, is foregoing as the price of even the most garbage crypto token eventually goes up as these things all rise together with stimulus and whatnot. Here's a question for you. I think you said 9 times in the last year there's been patches or something like this. Would you be more concerned with the number 9 or more concerned with the number 0?
Very good question. It's hard for me to say. What would you think to that one? I can't even give you an answer.
I would say I'd be more concerned with 0, because it just seems like this stuff now is pretty it's not popular is the wrong word. It's beneficial for companies like Google to be forthcoming when there are serious flaws in their browser architecture. We've talked about Microsoft a bunch on this show. We've talked about other platforms as well, but I'm happier with the number 9, or any number really, than I am with 0. 0 to me is you either know and didn't tell me, or you don't know, and that's even worse. So it's good, man. It's a like I said, drop everything story. Make sure you do this update. And Len, I'm surprised there you didn't drop in. You can always store your own crypto on your own hardware wallet. It seems to be.
Yeah, definitely do that. Don't use any of these hot wallets, especially tied to these web browsers that could potentially be hacked or exploited in one way or another. But let's move on. Barracuda Networks, they are dealing with a vicious malware attack, and that's crippling their product. And it has gotten so out of hand that they are urging customers to deal with this 0-day attack by physically removing and decommissioning an entire line of impacted hardware. And this is for Barracuda's Networks email security gateway, ESG devices. When I saw ESG, I'm like, how the hell is this? But I guess this makes sense. Email security devices. These devices, they're tasked with inspecting email for malicious content before it reaches the corporate systems. And they are the impacted equipment that I'm talking about. And the irony is that the equipment that's meant to stop malware itself has been impacted by malware. And the exploit was identified just last month, but it appears that this has been at least known by some people, but not Barracuda Networks, from at least October 2022. That's a long time that this has been out in the open without very much being done to close it off. So Barracuda Networks, they're advising that the hardware be replaced, and they are going to be providing the replacement hardware to consumers at no additional cost. When they say this, is the immediate cost is not there. It's going to be felt later as they try to recoup these costs when the goods or services they provide go up, and nothing is free. But they say as of June 8th, 2023, approximately 5% of active ESG appliances worldwide should have shown any evidence of known indicators of compromise due to the vulnerability. That's 5% of all ESG appliances. That is a large number. And with so many networks out there impacted, and with all these system operators out there, hopefully they're going to listen to this message to take it offline and replace it at Barracuda Networks cost. Because sometimes, who knows, they may not get this information, or they do, and it goes in one ear and out the other. And this goes to show you one more reason why email and using it is not secure. Try to find other ways to communicate. Email is not the most secure method of doing so.
So when I read this story, the first thing I realized is that this is way over my head from a technical point of view. But just in case you're considering or thinking about what something like this costs a company like Barracuda to do, I can put it to you in terms that everyone understands. In January of 2020, the Barracuda stock price was 57 cents US. I should say Canadian, sorry, 57 cents Canadian. Do you know what the Barracuda stock price is today, Len?
37.
2 cents. So precipitous fall. There's a bunch of really steep, deep red candles here. Probably around the time this story came to fruition. So I don't know. It sounds like it could be maybe stored in your Chrome extension wallet. I don't know. But this is I don't know. I don't know enough about hardware to say one way or the other that you should or shouldn't buy this stuff. You should or shouldn't look to replace this with a newer Barracuda unit, whatever. But my spider sense as a millennial tells me that if the only solution is to unrack this hardware and replace it with something else, the likelihood that you're going to replace it with the same manufacturer has got to be close to zero. Even if it's at their cost, it's got to be close to zero, right? If you're a serious outfit using this stuff is not for you and me. This is not retail hardware. Looks to me like, commercial hardware. So I can't imagine you want to put your business in the hands of a company that's, to say falling precipitously is not enough. Like, I know I used that word earlier, but there's got to be something more severe than that, because that's what this looks like. Terrible looking chart. Terrible.
Given that money's tight all around, maybe they'll just take them up on the free offer and throw caution to the wind. Right? Who knows? Anyways, let's move on, because some really good stories here. The Brennan Center for Justice, they have filed a request under the Freedom of Information Act, and they have received some juicy info. It appears that the Department of Homeland Security has or had a new program with the goal of collecting data on social media accounts. And the program was called Night Fury. And it sounds
hang on. What's your rating? I know that's not quite a hacker group, but we got to think here. I would give that's a 4 out of 5 for me. Night Fury, pretty good.
Easy. Almost like 4.5, 4.6. Like, this is a 1980s horror film name. I got to give them kudos for this. This is one easy to say. It sounds great. And it could apply to just about anything. I like it. Could be a game.
Big win.
Could be could be something from the Department of Homeland Security, like this one is. Right? Anyways, this Night Fury was created to, quote, identify potential terrorism risks, end quote. And they were doing so on social media. And the Department of Homeland Security Office of Science and Engineering then went out and issued a contract to the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And the contract was for $790,000 with a potential award amount of $3.4 million. And they are going to be collecting social media data. And they're analyzing Facebook, Twitter accounts, and they're trying to identify what they call, quote, pro-terrorists, end quote, and giving them a ranking and assigning a risk score. This was also expanded to all other platforms like Telegram and a whole bunch of others that I've never even heard of or used. And think about Twitter, for instance. There's the two-factor authentication that we used prior to a few months ago, and a lot of people use telephone, like SMS. And by doing so, you're linking your account to a telephone number, and that pretty much ties the ID to you. So that Twitter account is tied to a particular individual. And so going back to Night Fury, the project was abandoned just a few years ago, either 2019 or 2020. I saw different sources on this one. At least this is what is claimed, that have been abandoned. Who knows? It's probably still in operation. And the project, they had interesting plans in place, including a new way to snag a person's location without using GPS metadata. That is pretty scary stuff. Now, given the fact they're trying to look for pro-terrorism stuff, this is a very gray area because it's hard to define what indeed is a terrorist. Terrorist one day could be this person, and tomorrow could be a whole bunch of people. Yeah. And this is very, very scary stuff. I hope that this has been mothballed, but I wouldn't put money on it. I could think that if they already assigned $790,000 to have something done, they're not going to scrap this. That's good money, good taxpayer money, and they probably have some good value from it that they could use. Unfortunately, it's going to be used against people potentially like us. We could be the receiving end, which is too bad.
Yeah, odds of this being mothballed, I know that past performance, as they say, is not indicative of future behavior. But if you had to guess, it sounds like you and me on the same page. It's basically a 0% chance this was mothballed. Maybe the name should have been the inverse, right? They should have mothballed the program, kept the name for something a little more palatable for the American public. But, this comes at the same time, Len, or around the same time, I should say, that Tucker Carlson is reminding people in his fourth release that came out about an hour or two ago that the Biden administration is monitoring cell phones still to this day without the, warrant system, without the judiciary, without any sort of thing, and certainly without the awareness of American citizens. The thing I think that should bother people, Len, about this is that monitoring social media accounts, Instagram would have you believe you can make your account private. Twitter would have you believe the same thing. Your government would have you believe that you're, I don't want to say safe, but at least protected by checks and balances inside of their borders, right? You live in a modern democracy. You're not supposed to be subjected to these sorts of things. But it seems like everything we're told constantly just turned on its head. And again, my question is always the same. Show me the results. How many terrorists have you caught for this amount of money? How many, what is the number of an interesting ratio? When you think about ways your rights have been violated or upended over the last few decades, what is the ratio of, airplane bombs to number of shoes removed at the terminal checkpoint over the last, 30 years or 25 years now, I guess, almost? Probably not very good. And we don't see a lot of successes in these programs. Constantly, instead, what we see is, especially when it comes to domestic terror, a term that I'm using loosely because they're using it. I have my own personal feelings on that. But when we see domestic terror and things of this nature, what we often see is the phrase, was familiar to authorities. Generally, I understand that to mean that this person was, entrapped in some way. And this seems to always be the case, right? This guy was talking to feds online, and there's so many memes about this online already. It's become commonplace. And again, I just don't see the value here. Maybe someone can point me in the right direction, but I look at all these things that are happening and the data that's being collected, and it's all just, it's being misused in the best case and being actively, weaponized against average people in the worst.
The next story, I didn't really write anything. I didn't really research too much into it because it's a very it's a touchy subject. And
what are you going to look up? What would you even Google for this? You can't Google something for this.
I typed Instagram pedophilia and pressed enter, and then I got the first article that came up, New York Post. And
next
I'm
time
going
you get a pizza to your house, the guy's gonna be wearing an earpiece when he delivers you the pepperoni piece.
That is fine. There's a reason why I did this, but the reason why I didn't really do too much into this because I don't want to touch this too much. So I'm just going to read what's in the article, and it's not my opinion. This is somebody else's opinion. So Instagram recommendation algorithm linked and even promoted a vast pedophilia network, and that advertised the sale of illicit child sex material. And they were using hashtags related to child sex abuse, including graphic terms. I'm not going to name them because they're pretty bad. And they were even using an acronym, which, again, I'm not even going to say because it's obviously brutal that they're doing this. And some accounts allowed buyers to commission specific acts. This is all on Instagram, by the way. It's a lady by name of Sarah Adams, a Canadian social media influencer. And she went out and she was talking about what she saw. And she saw that other people were following flagged accounts that were distressed. And it was back in February she did so. And even some other things that I can't even talk about. This stuff is just absolutely disgusting that is being portrayed. And Instagram didn't do anything about this. Well, they did, but it took some time. I can't believe that they would allow this, that there is not there's not a filter to prevent this from going out there. They said that they disabled 490,000 accounts related to this between May 22nd and June 2nd. So that's in just a couple of weeks period of time. Almost 500,000 accounts were closed. That's insane. So I have nothing else to say about this. This is pathetic stuff by pathetic individuals.
Yeah.
And you know what? Instagram should be held accountable for this. Granted, it's somebody using their platform and they can't look at everything, but at least have a filter. The hashtags that they're showing here, incredible. And I'm going to leave it at that.
I'll just add two things. In 2019, Instagram banned all anti-vaccine hashtags on a dime. Took them 0 minutes and 0 seconds. And Len, you weren't allowed, don't forget to send certain anti-COVID narrative messages through DMs on Instagram, on WhatsApp, on Messenger, Facebook, all the meta platforms. So again, I'm not going to go into it, but this idea that they can't block it is bullshit. That's a bullshit excuse. And you're right. They should be held accountable. I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah. And let's move on to TikTok. Man, we talk about them quite a bit. And I'm sure hopefully everybody is aware that the US government, they've banned the use of TikTok applications on government devices, and these are government issued phones. And they're now extending this ban also to contractors that work for the US government. And this includes their own private phones, which is very strange. Considering the amount of outside contractors they have, it's got to be absolutely tons.
Yeah.
NASA, Department of Defense, Department of Transportation, and each one probably like thousands, tens of thousands, if not more. I'm just, maybe I have some hyperbole here, but there's got to be a lot of outside contractors working there. And a personally owned cell phone that they're saying that it's not used in the performance of the contract is not subjected to the probation period. So if you're using your phone, but it's not applicable to the contract per se, then you're okay to have TikTok. So I can understand where they're coming from, but doing this is pretty nuts. And they're doing this on other people's phones that they're using, their own personal phones. When are they going to be also doing other spyware stuff that's in phones? Just about every phone is a spyware. So I understand they're trying to attack TikTok, and because they understand that the information is being funneled back probably to the CCP, but other devices out there that people freely carry, they also do the same thing. Maybe it doesn't go to the CCP, but it goes to somewhere. So TikTok is not the only ones with blood on their hands. They should be, if they're going to do this, they should extend it to just Apple, Google, Instagram. There's probably a bunch of others. I can't think of the top of my head, but they're all guilty. Every one of them is guilty. So hopefully that they'll take the approach and do it to everybody, but we'll see what happens.
Hard to argue with that. I would just add, maybe humorously here, that the only thing we didn't get to see was one of these. This is my day, as a government contractor working for the United States, Department of Defense. I wake up, I get on the bus, I have my brownie, have a meeting, take a nap on the patio, whatever, those day in life TikTok videos. It's too bad. On the side of maybe just one more thing, on the side of the level of invasiveness that the US government can take in the lives of its contractors, right? Someone's got to tell me what the difference is. Presumably the problem is that the contract, the device being used for the contract is maybe typing in or receiving calls or whatever that are related to this type of, that has information that you don't want to see leaked.
Emails.
I guess isn't the question though, Len, like, why are you putting that stuff in the hands of a contractor anyways? Like, if the work is that sensitive, why not just have it done in-house? Like, doesn't that solve your leak problem more quickly? And in case of a significant issue with data or information being leaked, it's a much tighter circle to kind of round up. Seems to me like they're doing something here they don't need to do. There's an easier solution, but they have chosen not to do it this way.
They want to have their cake and eat it too by
maybe
employing
cheap labor,
people.
I guess.
Yeah, they don't have to deal with all the paying for their medical care and all that stuff that comes along with it. So it's just having their cake and eating it. And I guess in the times that we are right now, and people are hungry for jobs, if they get a job for the U.S.
they can
government,
just print it there, Len. But come on, we can't print. Like, here at AOE, if Mark tells me my phone can't have TikTok, that's all there is to it. But the U.S. government, they just print the money, buddy. Like, come on, just hire someone to do the work.
You can make your own legitimate money printer by getting a Bitcoin miner. So that's you do have the ability to do it as well. But let's move on. So some good news from for Easy DNS users, and for those particularly that like Nostr. The Easy DNS NIP05 WordPress plugin is now live, and it's now included in the WordPress repository. And for people that are unaware, this is for NIP05 or NIP05 verification, similar to like the blue check mark you get on Twitter, but it's the Nostr version, which is not as expensive. So you're not paying Elon for the verification in this case, but you're paying indirectly to Easy DNS, but at a fraction of the cost. Also, all users that are registered on the WordPress site simply just need to enter the pub key associated with your Nostr account, and then use the WordPress user ID as the host name as the NIP05. So it seems rather simple and straightforward. And if you want to have your identification verified on Nostr, this is the way to do it. And it's done it really cheap as well. So very cool stuff by Easy DNS.
We don't use one on, oh no, we do actually use one on Easy DNS, don't we? The Canadian Bitcoiner is one that we use. Yeah, we have been using this for a while. So I got to tell you, I don't use Nostr as much as I should, but I think little stuff like this, and kudos to Mark and the team for putting this in, because it serves two functions, right? One, if it verifies you as the person you say you are, right? If you own a domain or you're operating a service that has a domain, whatever the case is, you want people to know who you are on Nostr, helps build notoriety for you. But also, again, shout to Mark for this, because I know he's a big Nostr guy and you are as well. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there. The thing that this does is it encourages people to use the platform. They're more invested in the platform if they go through these steps and have the Nipple 5 verification and the badge and all the stuff that comes with it. And it adds to the kind of, personalization of the platform that I think it's missing a little bit at the moment. So I like this. I'm going to make an effort to use this more. I know we have the Bitcoin conference this weekend. I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion over there. And I'm looking forward to seeing where Nostr goes, man. I know they hit a bit of a road bump today, which maybe we could talk about right now. I'm not sure which story you have next, but we could talk about this road bump that hit with Zaps and Apple.
Yeah, so Apple, they turned a lot of Bitcoiners off their product because they're outcasting one of the apps on their store called Damus. And I think it's called Damus or Damus.
Nostr, Damus. Yeah.
Yeah. So they did this, and so for anyone that's wondering, Damus is an iOS only client, and that's for accessing Nostr. But this isn't the only one that's been outcasted by Apple, because Apple's doing it because they don't like the Zaps feature, and they want to maintain more control over sending tips and more control over how money is spent on any of their apps, which is very odd because they're, I guess, validating that Bitcoin is money. But nonetheless, this is one of three stories that came out in the past couple of days. Number one, Damus got the heave ho. I think it was eventually resolved, but there was some hairy times. It looked like all Apple users might have had to find another way to use Nostr. Zeus is an open source non-custodial wallet. They have been given the heave ho as well by Apple. And just today we had another one. The Fold app was given the kick. So it seems like a lot of these companies that are associated with Bitcoin in one way or another, or these apps associated with Bitcoin in one way or another, is not well liked by Apple, because they want to have more control over which money that's being spent over their apps that's used on their products. And they want to take a slice of the pie, just like if you want to verify your blue check on Twitter, you do it through Apple, there's going to be a 30% fee on top of it that goes to Apple. You do it outside that, say on a desktop, you save yourself 30% in the whole process. This is nuts. This is the walled garden that is Apple, and it's turned off. Nostr has been on fire about people looking for alternate ways in terms of switching to different devices. Graphene OS seems to be getting a lot of press these days, and good for that. And you know what? If they're going to turn their back to Bitcoiners, go ahead, because you know what? Eventually they're going to get wrecked in the process, because this is a train that cannot be stopped. Apple's absolutely it's humongous, but Bitcoin will eventually become even bigger. And the hornets that are here that in the environment of Bitcoin, they're ready to sting, and they're ready to sting hard. So this is absolutely nuts that they're doing this.
I should note, and I'm an Apple guy, so disclaimer, like I actually bought Twitter Blue the other day for my personal Twitter account on my Mac. And even if you do it through a browser, you don't have to pay. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah, they're trying to get you to use the App Store and use that walled garden ecosystem like you mentioned there. And they do it under the guise of security and user protection, right? The famous security and user protection, no matter whether it's cross-border payments or Twitter on your phone. It's got to be from their App Store. It's interesting, Len. I don't know if you watch. I'm a big Apple geek, so I watch the keynotes every year, the WWDC and the iPhone announcement. And we're in Canada, so we don't have this feature yet. We probably won't get it for some time because of our banking oligopoly, and God knows what kind of red tape comes with that, trying to break into that ecosystem. But in the States, you know that Apple has their Apple Pay linked directly to iMessage, right? So if you want to send somebody money over iMessage, you can do it pretty seamlessly. I suspect that they're going to try and build that out more. We've seen Apple become basically a financial services platform, at least a little bit over the last 6 or 7 months. They've offered some high interest savings accounts. They offer payroll. They offer some other things too in the Apple Wallet. that, just simply weren't there a few years ago. Before, it was just a replacement for your credit card, a convenient way to tap the machine. And now it's become a little bit more. I don't necessarily think Apple's anti-innovation. I do think they're anti-competition. And in this case, they're trying to stifle both. I think, Len, you and me agree that at the end of the day, this is going to be really difficult to stop. The DOMIS is, just another Nostr implementation. There's many more. And my understanding is that Apple was under pressure for some time leading up to the coming iPhone announcement. And I think there's supposed to be a secondary version of the App Store, or the ability to sideload apps on all Apple devices, legally required in the EU before the end of 2025, I'm pretty sure. So, you can kick this can down the road and try and build out the infrastructure to win that competition. In the interim, of course, you can do whatever you want, but you're relying on a lot of things there. I think you and me obviously have our own feelings on the US dollar and where it kind of sits in its dominance curve. And the US is a, hegemon empire type nation. It seems to me they're tying their cart to a lot of the wrong horses with this decision. And I'm not sure it's going to work out in the long term.
And interestingly enough, Mark is going to be borrowing my old Pixel 6. And
Nice.
going to be giving graphene a shot. So this is, what, if this is the way that they want to do business, people are just going to react and vote with their wallets.
I think so.
But yeah, and I'll be honest, Google may do the same thing eventually. But luckily, with the Google products, it's natively you could sideload stuff, and graphene is.
How long do you think that'll last? Do you think that's going to last?
The sideloading of stuff? Yeah, it's going to last permanently. I can't see them closing that loophole. Yeah,
okay.
Especially, with
you
graphene,
think it offers some kind of competitive advantage on the hardware side with Apple? Is that your base case? I don't know.
Do they have any advantage whatsoever?
I personally don't think so. Like, I've had both.
No.
Yeah, many different iterations of Android over the years. And every time I get an iPhone, I'm just reminded of how well the system works. You're confined for sure, but as long as you stay on your leash, everything you want to do is just going to be seamless.
Yeah, it sure is. I could agree with that. Let's move on and talk about Reddit. And they're pissing off a lot.
This is a great story. Great story.
It's got a lot of traction, and a lot of people are pissed off because of their new API policy. And there have been many virtual protests that have been erupted, including the subreddits Bitcoin, Apple, music, gaming, science, and many, many others that went private temporarily to show their disgust of the change to the API policy. Some, like the music subreddit, plan to go and protest indefinitely. So they're really trying to show that they mean business. Reddit now plan to charge for access to its data, and this is going to impact third-party developers who previously had it pretty good. So from July 1st of this year, Reddit plans to charge developers that require higher usage limits of 24 cents for every 1,000 API calls, or less than $1 per user every month. Reddit claims that generative AI is the source of this claim. I could understand why they're doing this, but still, it's going to be pissing off, or it has pissed off a lot of people. And it is a centralized platform. They can do whatever they want. If you want to play in their ballpark, you have to play by their rules. But Reddit, I've been noticing, has been getting worse over time. If you compare it where it used to be, there's been a lot of censorship, and there's been a lot of this and that. Like, even I was censored just for simply liking something. I was banned for liking something for 5 days. And it was just a post that you put on for the Canadian Bitcoiners. You put a video on, I liked it, and I got banned for that. What the heck? You didn't get banned, but I did. But anyway, users will eventually flock to other options out there that are more user-friendly, potentially decentralized in nature. So this is a very funny story, pissing off a lot of people. I understand why they're doing it, but you know what? Again, people are going to vote with their with their app usage or their online usage, and Reddit may suffer as a result of all this.
Bit of a wild, like, what a villain arc for Reddit and Spez, the current CEO. These guys, Len, had the world by the short and curlies. Everyone was going to Reddit. When you go to Google and you want to get an answer for something that's not AI generated, or an article from Forbes, The Economist, you just add Reddit to the search query, and you get a lively discussion, real people talking about something that you need an answer for. I've done this many times over the years, and every time I'm impressed with the quality of the content. You're right, though. In the last few years, thinking back to specifically, I guess,
Donald?
the Donald would be the time when I really started to go on Reddit a lot. And it's funny, like I would consider myself a political, political animal. You and I used to talk politics at work all the time, probably much to the chagrin of our colleagues, our past colleagues. But those discussions are important, and they're even more important. It's even more important, I should say, that they're uncensored and people are not, guarding their words for fear of being removed from the, quote unquote town square. But what did we see instead? We saw the Donald suffocated, quarantined, as Reddit likes to do. And there's other subreddits I've gone to in the past that have been quarantined as well. And I always find the content there is, maybe not the most agreeable stuff, but certainly not a danger to, societal safety or, the cohesion in America or Canada or geopolitical turmoil or whatever. These things don't lend themselves to the significant or severe outcomes that Reddit would have you believe. That's frustrating for me. I would say that, this is a poor policy decision because Reddit really is its users and its moderators. The moderators are unpaid. And I know there's some qualms about the centralization of moderators. If you look at the top 50 or 100 subreddits, a lot of the moderators are the same. And so, you might get banned by one moderator and then that guy could follow you around to other subreddits that you frequent, from funny to music to cats to, NBA or whatever. And take action against you with no real consequences. So taking action without consequences has always been one of the things that Reddit mods and Reddit writ large have been keen to do. I still think it's a bad choice to go this route because people want to use those other apps. And if they want to use them, they should be allowed, especially when it's clear the API cost is not that big a deal. Computing, on the whole is cheaper every day than it was the day before. Otherwise, a lot of these companies, just simply wouldn't exist at the scale they do. I'll add one more thing here. We don't often plug other shows on this program, but if you want a good summary of this, Louis Rossman does a really, really good, I think like 13 or 14-minute video on the nature of the API calls, what they should cost, and what the difference is. The difference is not going from $30 to $300 a month. It's going from $30 to $30,000 a month. And there's just no reason for that. This AI call ups or whatever the Reddit team is saying, I think is garbage. But check his video out. And if you're a Reddit user, consider scaling back, right? Like Len said earlier, you really only have one way to voice your opinion and stuff like this. They're not public yet, although they probably will go public at some point. But as a user, you only have one choice, and it's to scale back your use to show your displeasure. And I hope people do that.
We should file a Freedom of Information request to see if this has any ties to Night Fury. And I'd love to see if there's anything. Is the Department of Homeland Security involved?
Why? Someone's got to explain to me why. And this is like the third time we've seen this in the last few years. This is a bit of a tangent, but I'm sure you have a thought on this. We're going way long for one of these AOEs, but whatever.
We sure are.
Gets me out of housework. So, why is it that the companies who go public and want to become public facing always censor the most? At what point are we, as a group of concerned citizens, going to admit and try and do something about the fact that it seems that while we are constantly told that our governments are protecting democracy with their every move and every, specifically in recent years, every dollar of ours they send overseas, when it comes to our own democratic values, we're constantly left behind as soon as they get in tight with regulators? Why is that?
They don't want to piss people off, especially if they plan to go public. They want to ensure that they have everybody on side.
It's not right.
Regulators,
it's not right.
New shareholders that's coming in.
It is not right, man.
And this is the way things work, unfortunately. And you know what? When they do the IPO, don't buy in. Let it tank and then buy in.
Absolutely not.
Anyways, let's move on and talk about the Wuhan. And lab leaks. We haven't ever talked about anything.
It's going to be amazing if this video is on YouTube for more than 4 hours. The stuff we've covered tonight. There's no way.
Well, I'm going to just read out. So Chinese scientists at the Wuhan Institute.
Glenn, the picture for this article. Like, come on. If we make it through 4 hours on YouTube, it's going to be a miracle. It's going to be a miracle.
So the Chinese scientists, they were running claims that they were running a dangerous undercover program of experimental bioresearch, according to a Sunday Times report. So it's not me just saying it is a Sunday Times. I'm just quoting what they're saying on this report. And reporters, they say they went over hundreds of confidential reports, memos, papers, and emails. I wonder if Barracuda Networks was involved with those emails somehow. The Wuhan lab began looking into the SARS virus in 2003, and it's claimed here that they received U.S. state funding and collaborated with leading researchers on cutting-edge technologies, says this paper. It's conducted risky experiments on viruses from bat caves in southern China, initially publicizing its findings in the name of vaccine research before going dark in 2016. And authorities hushed up the deaths in 2019 that were linked to a new virus found in a mine shaft in Yunnan province. And this is the only known close relative of the COVID-19 prior existence to the outbreak. So U.S. investigators claim classified work on the new bug was to be made before it would be made infectious to humans, and they linked it to bioweapon creation programs, saying it became COVID-19 and was linked to a lab accident. And well, it wasn't really a wet market; it was just more a lab leak more than anything. And yeah, this is very interesting stuff. This is all alleged. I have no idea what's the truth behind this. Don't come after me.
What do we say? What do we say about this?
I say that it's an interesting story. Could be fact, could be fiction. I don't know, but it's
very, very interesting. Very interesting. We got to get that guy from the old TV show Fact or Fiction to do a story on this. You ever seen that show with the actor from Star Trek? Yeah. And the guy's like, he tells a story about you know, like he'll be like talking about in the cab.
You know what?
Home.
I'd rather have this on 1,000 Ways to Die. I think this would be much better. I haven't seen that show in forever, but
that's a good show too. I gotta watch more TV. Awesome. I don't have time. Anyway, that's it, everybody. God bless. We'll see you next week for more fun and games here on Access of Easy. Till then, take care of yourselves.
Yeah, take care.